welcome to the Rocking the Journey podcast. I'm Debbie Binner, and my guest this morning is somebody I've wanted to speak to for quite a long time after reading his amazing book, The Lazarus Strategy. Lazarus Strategy? Last year. He is a professor at King's College London, and he specialises in healthy aging. So welcome, Professor Norman Lazarus.
It's absolutely lovely to be here, and I want to say a big hello to everybody who's going to listen to this podcast.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, firstly, I know your book so well, and I think this is my midlife mind, midlife brain. It's the Lazarus Strategy, isn't it? Just to get
Correct.
that right.
Yes,
yeah. I have it by my bedside, and can't believe I've not remembered that correctly.
Yeah, it's a strategy. It's a strategy in the sense that it's not prescriptive. In other words, because everybody is slightly different, so you've got to develop your own strategy as to where you lead your own life in order to have a healthy old age. So it's a strategy and not prescriptive.
The really interesting is it's listed by quite a few journalists, wellbeing journalists, as in their top 10 of the best advice on how to age healthily. So we're going to explore lots of your themes in our podcast this morning. But I want to start with you, because you are the kind of living example of your strategy. So you're 84, right?
84. Well, actually, I've just turned 85. I don't know whether that helps or not. Oh my gosh, 85! I'm going to cry. Okay, so the answer, yes. In fact, I turned 85 in December, so I'm now switched over plus another year. I don't know whether that's good or bad.
So tell me, 85, is it right? You're medication free. You
Correct.
Feel fitter now than you did when you were 50. And you're still doing long distance cycling.
Yes, I think, can I just embroider a little bit on the fact that I'm fitter than I ever was? If you think about aging, as you know, as everybody's listening to this podcast, is a whole spectrum running from young to old. And you really can't compare a fit 80-year-old, let's say myself, to myself as a fit 60-year-old, because there's just too much difference. So when we say that I'm feeling healthier than I ever been, you've got to begin to ask, what do I mean by healthy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And let us define healthy here so that everybody is operating with the same definition. Healthy is where you do not have any of the diseases that are the result of being sedentary, overweight, and having some perhaps being downhearted or slightly depressed. That is healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then you got to ask yourself, okay, so at 60, did I have any of the diseases? And the answer is no. So I was healthy for a 60-year-old. At 80, have I have any of these diseases? No. So I'm healthy for an 80-year-old. But we are equally healthy. We neither have diseases. But are we equally fit? That is another question. Well, I cannot compete with my 60-year-old self. In other words, if my 60-year-old self came and sat on a bicycle here, that 60-year-old will disappear over the horizon before I know what's happening. But again, we come back to it. We mustn't confuse the ability to do exercise or our amount of exercise we can do with being healthy. So everybody who is free from the diseases of being sedentary is healthy. Whether we are the same fitness is another question. What we actually are doing is we operating and occupying different levels, but that level is appropriate for our age.
So just talking about those illnesses that people have almost come to expect as they age, like diabetes, heart conditions, just taking tablets to make everyday life a bit better. And are you saying that actually this is unnecessary?
Yes, I'm saying That is totally unnecessary. Totally is too strong a word because there's some people who can't help themselves. But I mean, it's largely, let's put it that way, totally unnecessary, because there is now a lot of evidence that these diseases which you mentioned, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, disease of the heart, getting heart attacks, disease of the vascular system, and I could go on. There are 20 of them, and I think I list them in the book. But all of those are really dependent upon lifestyle. And if we can change our lifestyle, then in the large majority of cases, will not get these diseases. Somebody listening to this podcast will say, oh, yes, I know somebody exercising
Yes.
and they did get that. Well, of course, unfortunately, we're not all the same.
Mm.
We all have different biologies, and you cannot make a statement which will include everybody in the population. I mean, I hate to say this, but for example, even in our current situation, giving a vaccine doesn't mean to say you're not going to get the disease, if you know what I mean, and the
Yeah.
other things which will help you get the disease.
Mm.
Non-smoking, it's not going to, it's to a large extent is going to stop you getting lung cancer. But
Mhm.
unfortunately, there are going to be certain people who are going to get lung cancer. It's the same thing here, that if you do the, live the proper lifestyle, then your probabilities of getting any one of these diseases goes down dramatically. So that's what I'm talking about, that if
So,
you
so
do the
this,
certain things, the probabilities go down.
so the idea of genes and somebody saying to you, as I was reading some of the comments in your book, somebody saying, actually, you know, you've just got the, how do we know you just haven't got great genes, and that this is why you're healthy at 84 and somebody else slips into lots of difficulties in their 60s because they've just been dealt the wrong cards. How much
Okay.
does that factor in this?
Okay, we should go on a bit about my gene background, but let's leave that for a moment. We are talking now about diseases which occur because of lifestyle, right? Very important.
Yeah.
We know people get diseases for which they have no control. Rheumatoid arthritis, and I could go on. There's a whole list of the diseases. And the reasons for that is probably genetic, without a doubt. And those diseases I put aside, and I will not even pretend that what we are going to do really affects those diseases. It can help and ameliorate the way you move and stuff, but it doesn't affect the disease. What we are talking about here is diseases which come about because of what we do to ourselves. And if you look at those diseases, yes, there is a genetic component, but that genetic component floats around 20 to 25% as being the problem. So yes, there's a genetic component, but it's not a dominant component in this. What is much more the dominant, the 75%, is in fact the way you live your lifestyle. And that is why sometimes it's not going to work, because yes, the genetic component has a greater effect in certain individuals, but in the vast majority of people, that genetic component can be overridden. And I'm going to continue with that thought. What is it? You can override a genetic component? Of course you can. Let me give you an example. I come from a family which is overweight, and I'm sure people listening to this immediately can tune into that kind of background.
Yeah.
My mother and my uncles were all overweight, and this expressed itself in me, but not my brother,
Mm-hmm.
who in fact inherited, I suppose, most of my father's genes. So if you had to see, he's dead now, unfortunately, but if you had to see me and my brother standing next to each other, you'd see the slightly podgy person here and this nice thin person here. And that shows where the disease, the genes actually, there were the difference between us. But when I was about 50, I suppose it's very difficult to explain how these changes in behavior arise, because don't forget, I'm a medical doctor. I've understand my physiology and everything, and yet I was overweight. Okay. And why? Well, because I was eating too much, and of course, because of the genes. But then you say to yourself, right, what happens if I stop eating? In other words, is it possible? Are my genes going to keep me fat if I don't give them any food, to put it crudely? That's the question you've got to ask yourself. And I think you can already see if you don't eat, you're going to get thin, irrespective of what your genes are, because how else are you going to put on weight? And I decided, it was in Switzerland, it's quite interesting. I was fit. Okay, so I was fit and fat, but I wasn't healthy. Okay, the fact that I could go up, walk up a mountainside didn't make me healthy, because the fat part was part of the process which would eventually begin to give me diseases which were dependent upon the fact that my obesity was there. So for the time that I was doing my mountain walking with my wife, who's older than me, incidentally, was walking with, and she should be here, she'd tell you more than I can. But uh, that that is the difference. And I decided, and I think I say in my book, over the soup course. Don't ask me why the soup course, but that was it. I decided, I looked down and I saw my tummy and I said, I've had enough. I'm intelligent enough to understand that this is not the way that I'm going to live a healthy old age. It's not the way I'm going to enjoy my wife's company. It's not the way I'm going to enjoy my grandchildren. And also, and I think we must come to talk about, as you said, we'll talk a little bit about what goes through the mind of a 75 and an 80-year-old in relation to the impact of their lifestyle on their children. But we leave that for now. But anyway, I looked on and I thought, oh, why am I doing with all this little blubber here? And I made the decision I was going to lose weight despite my genetic background. And of course, I had a companion who helped me, and that is one of the most important points of everything. If you're going to embark on making certain that you meet your correct weight, the whole surroundings of the way you eat, where you eat, what food you eat, the mood over the lunch table, over the dinner table, is very, very important to ensure that you do that. And together we lost weight.
Can I just stop you there? Because I mean, I think weight is, particularly to our audience and to me, such an interesting issue, and something I know I was always a little bit underweight until I hit 50. And then suddenly I couldn't eat the kind of stuff I was eating. Such a shock, and still battle with it now. But you being a medic, knowing all the things that being overweight can lead to, but you were still overweight. And so lots of people get the theory that they shouldn't be overweight, but how do you really embrace that and make those changes? Because if it was easy, lots of people would be doing it. So what's your advice to somebody who's thinking, yeah, I know I'm overweight, I know I don't want to be getting these diseases, but I can't stop myself, I can't stop being overweight?
Yeah. Overweight is because you overeat. That is, just put it down there. I mean, people don't like to admit it and they'll say all kinds of things. So let's start there. And of course, it's difficult. Even now, I've been at my correct weight, 35 years. Okay. Every day, every second day that I wake up, I've got to ensure that I dedicate myself again to not overeating. In other words, not eating for the sake of eating. And you've got to, so no, let me stop. So you've got to begin to get yourself out of the situation you're in that is making your habitual eating habits. You've got to break that. You've got to begin to try and make yourself make this whole thing an adventure. Okay, and what do I mean by that? you can't just go to a book and pick it up and say, ah, this book says if I eat 3 lettuces a week, I'll be thin in 2 months. You notice what you're doing there. You are changing your behavior in one fell swoop, saying, okay, I'm going to eat lettuce now for the next, or whatever other food it is. I'm being silly, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You can't do that because all of us have a way of interacting with people. We have a way of eating. We have a way of preparing meals. So we don't want to go too far away from that. So the first place we start is saying, what am I eating? Sit down with yourself, look in the mirror, and ask, what am I eating? And the way I knew I was eating, I kept a 3-week diary. I just wrote down every single thing that I ate, and I didn't cheat, right? And everything if I had a half a sweet, if I had a potato, what's that? I wrote it down. And then I said to myself, does this, what I'm eating, constitute a healthy diet? Okay. Now, I, as a medic, could work that out. But I would expect that, and of course, I've advised many people. And when I advise many people, I sit them down and I begin to explain to them the relationship between food, energy, and activity. And for people who haven't got that intimate interaction, who haven't got somebody they can go to, make it into an adventure. In other words, make the whole thing we say, well, now I'm going to learn. I'm going to try and understand the relationships between carbohydrate, proteins, and fat, and how much to it. It's sort of something new. You trying to increase, part of healthy living is your mind.
Yeah.
So what you're doing here is you're giving your mind executive decisions it has to make. So make yourself part of the whole process. Try and get control. In other words, don't use the process in order to control you. You try and control the process. So there you are, you're at home. You now know what food you're eating. You now must learn which parts of these foods you've got to eliminate. An adventure. Make sure, and this is so important, make sure that your partner is with you. Because if you got to start doing half for you and half for your partner, you already see you begin to break this concentration, this idea that you need to have in order to control your diet. You can't do it for 2 people. You can only do it for 1 person. And that's
So,
where you've got to start. You've got to start with yourself and make yourself part of the whole process.
I think that's just such a fantastic idea and really feeds into that idea of that to change habits, it has to come from you. You can't be told to do something. It has to come from you, which is great. But 2 questions there. Number 1, a lot of people don't have a partner. So how do you get that motivation? And number 2, we hear a lot in the media through just people telling you things of bad foods and good foods. Do you agree with that idea that there are some things you should be eliminated from your diet completely, just never stopping, never eating again?
Well, I think, again, we must be careful because we're all humans and we tend to sometimes jump off the slope, if you know what I mean, just because of what we are. And not only that, we have lots of friends and we want to mix. But there is the other important point, is that if you haven't got a partner, then your friends must also, if you have true friends, your friends must also begin to realize that when you come to visit them, you don't want a cup of tea and a slice of cake because you're having, when you go for your coffee, all you want is a black coffee. You don't need these other little bits that come about. That they too, in all your interactions, have got to begin to support you in what you are doing, because it is so difficult. I think I put the figure in my book, 95% of people who try are going to fail if they just decide they're going to go on a diet,
Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And you mustn't think of it as a diet, because what it is it's not a diet that you're going on. What you are trying to do is move from a state in which you are eating improperly to a state in which you're now eating correctly. That is the way to look at it. That what you are doing is you are moving yourself from this situation which is going to destroy you. I promise you it will. And it's a hard word, and I use it purposely, because that is why you've got to move out of there. It's absolutely imperative that you do that. So you've got to move out of this disaster area into this new area. And the way you can, and I'm repeating myself, but I'll keep repeating myself as we go along. The only way you can do that is if the changes are within yourself, that you decide that you are going to do this, then you can do it. And on top of that, if you have the support of the people who are around you, then you have a bigger chance that you, in fact, are going to succeed. And you must remember, and I say this from deep experience, I say it from 35 years experience, I do not generally give out advice where I haven't been before.
Yeah.
Everything I tell you, I promise you that I have been there and I've been through it. I've been through all those decades.
Yeah.
That you must know yourself before you embark on this great adventure of beginning to ensure that you eat the right foods in the right proportion, the right amount for your age. And you can see now another concept that you've got to build into your mind. And this is why my book talks to people who are around about 50.
Yeah.
Because if you remember when we opened up the discussion, we said, well, it's only about 50 that you begin to get intimations of things that are
Yeah.
aging. And you got to then adopt that. In other words, you mustn't try and hide from the fact that you're going to age, because you can't hide. You've got to understand that you've got to adapt your life decade by decade because of the aging process. So we've been talking about food. We haven't spoken about exercise, but food. As I get older, I need less food. Why? Because I'm shrinking. Okay. And there's nothing I can do about the shrinking.
Yeah.
So you can see the difficulties. And again, I will try and re-emphasize what I've said. You are embarking on a lifetime of watching your weight, exercise, and mind. And you must prepared all the time to factor in the fact that you are aging. Aging is not our friend, right? And we don't want to say, yay, I'm aging. But what we can do is we can control aging in such a way that we can modify its effects. And that is what we're trying to do. And again, we can only do that if we admit to ourselves that the aging process is intrinsic to us. There is nothing we can do about it, but we can modify it. And because we are aging doesn't mean to say we can't enjoy ourselves. We mustn't begin to unlink the fact of aging and enjoyment.
I think that's such a fascinating area of your work. And I think it is, I don't know if it's more difficult as a woman, but society is that idea of society being so youth obsessed, and the fact that aging is about demise and about the end of things, and also the fact, I think, as a society, we don't speak about death so much, or that, finally people's lives will end, makes it really difficult for people, I think, to accept that fact. the fact that actually the body changes as we age, but also, which I love your ideas on this, that you can still have fun and that life just doesn't fall off a cliff because you hit 50. And actually, there's some really great things about being older that I've certainly found. And taking that kind of idea that to look after your body is actually means you can have more fun and you can have a much more enjoyment, much richer quality of life. Is that something?
Yes, Debbie, you've got it there. That is the whole thing. In other words, we don't want to do what we're doing because we want to sit and sulk in a corner. We want to do what we're doing because we want to go out there, and
Yeah.
we want to at all times challenge ourselves so that we use what capabilities we have at every decade of our lives.
Yeah.
And if you embrace that idea, then you can see as you get older, and again, I do not tell anybody anything that I haven't been through myself. I've been from a champion Audax rider all the way down to where I am now. But that doesn't eliminate my enjoyment, because I at all times say, gosh, I wonder if I can do that. I'm 75 now. Will I be able to do that? So the adventure goes, I'm 85 now. Gosh, I wonder whether I'll be able to do something else. So I keep giving myself little challenges all the time. And all these things just give me enjoyment. I can try and take my body and my mind to places where I haven't been before. And again, let me all those lovely people who have read my book, let me remind them that I did something which I suppose even to me was surprising, was that at 70 years of age, right, I decided I needed to know more about myself and my body, and I went back to university. Now, I want everybody to think about that I'd been retired for about 20 years. Actually, no, it's wrong. I've been retired from 59. What's it? 11, 59 to 70 is 11 years. So I'd been
Yeah.
retired for 11 years. And yet I had the mental agility, I had the physical prowess because of the way I had been living to be able to do something as dramatic as that and continue in what I'm doing that for the next 15 years. But the point I'm trying to make is not to make me build me up, is that because I was living and watching my lifestyle, I enabled me to do things which I am surprised that I was able to do. And you don't have to look at me for an example. If you just read the literature, the number of average people, we're not talking about Olympians now, we're not talking about world class, we people who've just decided that what they are going to do, they are going to do something extraordinary because they
Yeah.
just think they can. And I think that is the thing we got to keep, that average people, you and me, we have the body, not of Olympians, but we have the body of 2 million years of evolution. And that body was designed in order for the hominoid species to survive. And we have survived. So it means that each one of us has within ourselves the ability to push the physiological uh, mechanisms that we have, which are individual to us, to areas we really can't contemplate we can do unless we have ourselves in the proper physical and mental state in order to do that.
So just before we move on to exercise, I want to just finish off on food. So some three kind of quick fire questions. Alcohol. Can we or can't we?
I drink alcohol only on very special occasions. Alcohol is a poison. Finished. Don't even think about anything else. A very enjoyable poison, but it's a poison. And the problem is that we all underestimate the effects.
Yeah.
If we had to look, and one should, again, if you want a little adventure, you want to expand your mind a little bit, go into the literature and just see what effects alcohol has got on our society and compare them, say, to smoking.
Mm-hmm.
Smoking, in essence, was an individual enterprise that one embarked on. I know passive smoking, but I'm not. It was, in essence, our own problem. Alcohol is a much more insidious thing
Mm-hmm.
because alcohol spreads like fire in bushveld, and it just begins to engulf people way beyond the person who is taking alcohol. And we just think about families, and we think about ruined lives, and we think about going to the hospitals, see how many people have got alcoholic liver disease, see how many people have got alcoholic nervous disease. And you suddenly see that, yes, it's nice to think about alcohol as a pleasant thing to indulge in, but if you begin to go too high, you spill over into this horrible environment which you don't want to be in. And
But
it's
what about
sorry.
that, that one glass of wine, there's people like, in France, Italy, I used to live in Italy, that just one glass of wine, is that a danger if you're just having
No,
one?
no. In other words, when I go out and sometimes at home, when we have a special meal, I'll have a glass of wine and I enjoy it and I love it.
Yeah.
But that, like everything else, you might as well say to me, well, do I eat crisps? Well,
Yeah.
I would put crisps and wine. They're not the same, but what I'm trying to say is the perception is that if I eat a packet of crisps, I'm crazy. If I eat 2 or 3 crisps, it's not going to make any difference because I'm again watching the intake. If I come to a bottle of wine, if I drink a bottle of wine, I'm crazy. I really am, because that's going to be an overdose for me in terms of wine. If I have a glass of wine, it's not going to make any difference here or there, provided I do it on a uh, intermittently and not sort of as a regular part of my diet. So all of these things, all foods, fall exactly into this category, that they are bad. So what about red meat?
Mm.
Yeah. How much red meat do you eat? If you sit down and eat a steak and it's got 300 grams of uh, protein or this, you are overeating.
Right.
You are overeating. You only need, and I'll take you as a woman as opposed to man, you only need 80 grams of protein a day. 80. I want you to think about that. 80.
Yeah.
How much is 80? It's like it's a packet of crisps and a bit more. I don't know, of that order. I don't know, but just think about. So if you give me red meat and I cut off and I eat 80 grams, I'll be okay because I'm within the limits of which I'm supposed to eat. If you give me a hamburger's got 560 calories. So if I cut a hamburger in a tenth and eat that, then I'm eating the correct amount. So you can see that, yes, these things are poisonous, if I can put them that way, because we are taking too much.
Yeah.
If we take
so
them,
that means if we can have that kind of small afternoon tea with a tiny piece of cake, that's fine.
provided, yes, you understand that if I have this piece of cake, something else has got to suffer over there.
Yeah.
In other words, I might have a potato less, or I might have something. And that's what the way June and I, who's my wife, that's what we do. When we go out for a meal, we will have our meal. So we'll have first course, second course, and sometimes even a sweet. But we now know that we've eaten a very full meal.
Yeah.
So when we go home in the evening, no chance of another meal.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
We will simply have a bit of salad or a cup of tea or something of that order.
Mm.
So all the time we are, and that's after 35 years.
Mm.
All the time we are balancing the amount of food we eat, and it's always not in the forefront now because after about 6 months or something you begin to adapt, but it's somewhere here in the brain in which you say, oh, we've had this much, I've got to just cut down, that sort of stuff. So I will never have 3 meals in a day.
Mm.
I will just have sufficient food during the day that will allow me to keep to the amount of food that I need for my age.
Mm-hmm.
And what I do is, to make it enjoyable, I move most of the calories towards the evening because my wife and I spend a lot of time in the evening together. We talk about things over the table, and it's nice to have a big meal. So the mornings, very simple, a bit of porridge. The afternoons, a sandwich, a bit of cheese, a cup of tea. Evening, a nice meal where we sit and
Yeah.
talk and discuss what's gone through the day. So you see that if you want to, you can make it a big meal in the middle of the day, but then you've got to cut down. But
Yeah.
you've got to do these things. You've got to actually make sure you look after yourself in relation to the amount of food you eat. And that is why you must make it an adventure.
Mm.
You've got to begin to understand that when you change your life, you've got to be part of that change. You cannot just say, I'm going to do it tomorrow. You've got to slowly integrate this whole change in the way you look at food. And maybe then you will have a chance, like me, like my wife, like many others who have begun to understand themselves. In other words, why do I want to stop eating the way I do? You've got to understand. When you understand yourself, I call it discovering the dragon. Each one of us,
Now,
I believe.
I just want to pick up something because a real theme of when we're talking at the moment is your wife, um, and I know a lot of your book. We're going to talk about exercise in a minute because I think that that's the big piece, the exercise piece. But something I've been very interested in is that the emotional and mental side of people's lives. And we hear a lot that, you know, being married is a good indicator for a long life, having a dog, all these things. How much do you think those things play a part in us living to a good age and in as good as health as possible? Can we just be really thin and doing lots of exercise, but forget all the other stuff, and then that's fine?
No, you can't. I suppose, let's start with an analogy. These these analogies I give are very poor because biology is so complex, but it'll give you an idea what I mean. So let us say that uh, you have a car outside, okay? Now, the first thing this car needs in order to go is fuel. Agreed? No, it's not going to
Yeah.
go anywhere, no matter how good it is. Okay. So if you have a petrol car and you come and give it diesel fuel, the car is going to break down. Simple as that. You need to give the car, the engine we talk now, the proper fuel. That's where we start. And that's what we've been talking about for the
Yeah.
last 30 minutes. You've got to give it the right amounts, the exact protein concentrations, the correct quantity, and then you feed that to your car. Okay, your car now has got an engine. Now, if you don't look after that engine, that's what we have MOTs for. I mean, you look at the wheels and everything, but I mean, in essence, you have an MOT every to make sure that the engine's going, and if the engine's not right, you've got to make sure it's going right. The engine is our muscles, our body. So if you're going to give wonderful fuel or the right fuel to your body, you should ensure that the body can utilize the fuel in as efficiently way as possible. So the way to do that is to exercise. Fine. So now you've got the proper fuel, You've got your engine, which can take you many places. But here is the next crucial point. In order to take that car anywhere, you need a driver. Right? And our driver is the mind. So think about it. If I'm sitting there unhappy, and we all know what unhappiness is, and we all know the things that cause unhappiness are multitudinous, and we could make a list here which is full of library, but we know what it is. Where am I going to drive to? Right? Where am I going to take this car? There's no real destination. Okay. And you can see if I'm depressed for various reasons, where I'm going to, again, what sort of perspective have I got on life? However, if you've now got a proper fueled, a proper body, and you begin to now use the mind, can now say, listen, Norman, I'm going to take you to places you never thought you could. Let's go and make an adventure out of this. What we're going to do is we're going to drive to Land's End. You say, why do I want to drive to Land's End? It's not the point. The point is we're having an adventure. If you're going to start sitting saying, oh, why do I drive today? No, we're going to drive. So that is the point. The point is that there is no mind that exists in a space, and there's no body that exists in a space. There's only mind body.
Yeah.
And the mind and the body talk to each other millions of times a second, even more than that. Every million they talk. Because why? Well, the mind's got to know where you're sitting, where you're standing, what you're doing, where you're going, what you're seeing. And the body's got to say, I've got to move this muscle, that muscle. So you can see the whole thing is absolutely intertwined. And now you see the big problem. And the big problem is nobody teaches integrated physiology. Nobody teaches physiology in which everything is dependent upon everything else. So if you go to your doctor, and the doctor could be a very good one, the doctor's been trained. How do I know? Because I've been there. The doctor's been trained that, is there something wrong with your heart? I can't do something. I want to send you to a heart specialist. Something wrong with your mind? I need to send you to that person. Something wrong with your muscle? Oh no, I've got to send you to that. So if you divide the body into these little systems, you get a very fractured idea of the way the body operates. It's only when you begin to do what I have been doing over the last 15 years, is studying what healthy aging means, that you begin to really see. It's not a theoretical concept. You really see how integrated we are, how everything has got to be working as efficiently as possible in order for us to lead a healthy, happy life. And that's about as much as I can say.
Does that bring in, I'm a lifelong yogi, really interested in yoga, Tai Chi, and have really liked that kind of Eastern approach to living well, which is about moving the body, making sure you're moving the body in all the right ways, but also bringing the emotions and the mind into it as well. Do you think we do have quite a lot to learn from that approach here in the West?
Yes, I think so. I mean, I don't think that there's anything, the philosophy of it is quite clear. I think what we got to begin to develop is ways, what are the most efficient ways of ensuring that is in place. I'm disappearing. That's in place, you see. It's how do you put, yes, I like to start from the basic physiology of it. In other words, that's where I want to start. I don't want to start from I've got to have my mental process and that, because I need to understand what it is I'm trying to do in terms of the physiology. Okay. And so, yes, I have nothing again, nothing. I think it's a great idea, but I start from a different perspective. In other words, I start from the physiological and the chemical processes that are taking place that are changing when in fact I exercise. If I exercise everything, including my mind, and I know that there are processes taking place. So yes, if that's one of the ways you want to go, that's fine, and I admire it, but I'm just starting from a different perspective.
I totally understand that. And so let's go on to exercise, and which is as the key pillar in your strategy. That so you would not go along with the idea that you can be kind of fat, sedentary, but happy, and you can have a good life like that, because you realize that life is finite. So you're going to have that afternoon piece of cake, you're going to have a glass of wine, and you know the risks. But you think exercise is absolutely key to a good, rich life?
Yes, I think there's no doubt about that. And as we talk, we'll slowly unravel the reasons why. But let's start right from the beginning. And what do I mean from the beginning? I want you and the people listening to this podcast, put them back to 40,000 years ago. And I want you to imagine there you are, not in your lovely animal skin or whatever you're wearing or whatever everybody's wearing. And you've got to survive, right? So what do you need to survive? Well, you need a cave, yes, but you've got to eat, right? And how do you get food? There's no plum tree growing around there, because don't forget, fruit is relatively recent, the big fruit. There might be a little berry somewhere, but in order to eat enough berries to give you enough calories, you'd sit there the whole day just eating berries, and you'd still be in trouble. And then how are you going to feed the rest of the group? So the way the group operates, it's got to hunt, right? And as a result of evolution, it just happened that, evolution has got no plan. Things just happen. And it just happened that humans have the physiology in order to do chasing. That's what we built. You can tell, your heart can accelerate, you can breathe more, you can run. You've got all of those properties. I suppose Mo Farah is sort of the most wonderful example of those properties over there. But all of us have got those properties. If you couldn't chase a prey, you died. Not only you, the whole of the hominoid species. So you can see, and let's envisage the people sitting around, I was going to say a campfire, but anyway, let's envision sitting around a fire. There they are. How many of those individuals do you think are going to be overweight? Because tomorrow they've got to go and chase whatever it is. And there's never enough food. What I mean is, there's enough food to keep you for today, but tomorrow you've got to hunt again, or in 2 days' time you've got to hunt again. You haven't got a pantry full. You always got to do that in order to survive. So exercise is not something that is sort of intrinsic to us, extrinsic to us. Exercise is us. Exercise is what enabled eventually me to talk to you over the Zoom, because we survived. Now you remove exercise. Think about that. You've removed one of the basic requirements that was necessary in order to enable the human species to survive.
Yeah.
What is going to happen to your physiology? Your physiology is going to disintegrate, because if you do not exercise, your muscles go, your heart goes. If you do not exercise your dog, as I say in my book, your dog goes. If you do not exercise your horse goes. I don't understand how people can believe that humans are any different from any other biological living animal that actually must have, maybe a sloth, all right, let's not get too, but absolutely needs exercise in order to survive.
Yeah.
If you're a hunter, you need to survive by exercise. The fact that you don't hunt anymore doesn't remove the need for exercise. Do you see that?
Yes.
And that is why I believe exercise is so central.
And I guess then it doesn't, because it's interestingly, because you're really challenging my thoughts on this. I guess really it doesn't matter what kind of exercise you do, as long as you're exercising. There's
Correct.
no magic being a long distance run or whatever. It's just it's just moving that is
Absolutely. In other words, if you remember in my book, I call it movement, physical activity, exercise. I don't care. The reason it's divided into exercise, and it's the academics. The academics love to say exercise is some sort of structured thing, whereas physical activities, it's all nonsense. You just need to move, and you can call it what you like, and it's absolute necessity in order to move. If you do not move, your physiology disintegrates. I don't know how, I don't know what else to say. I don't know if somebody comes up with any other argument as why you don't need to exercise, it's obviously bogus. You know, it just doesn't exist.
So accepting the premise, we have to move, have to exercise, but how much?
Oh, wow.
I think people struggle with this, of how much they need to do.
Okay. I'll start off by saying what you've got to attain, and then I'll try and give you ways to do it. If you came to me in my laboratory, stop. If you went to your doctor and you said to your doctor, how healthy am I?
Yeah.
And your doctor says, have you got a job? Yes. Any problems? No. What do you want me to tell you? So, well, I want to know how healthy I am. So, well, compared to who? Am I healthier than that person over there? And the doctor would sort of be unsure how to advance from that point, because what do you want to know? But you come to my laboratory and you say how healthy I am. I say, oh, wonderful. There is one indicator of physical health, and that is VO2 max. And I devote a whole chapter into my book, VO2 max. And I think, again, I don't want to go too much into it, but VO2 max, you can see, as you know, is the amount of oxygen that you can move through your body when you're under pressure, under physical pressure. Okay. And you can immediately see again that in order to be able to move oxygen sufficiently or efficiently to all parts of my body, I need good heart, I need good lungs, I need sufficient hemoglobin. My vascular system must be good. My muscles must be in trim. My brain must be able to be there saying, come on, Norman, push yourself. You've got to go fast. So you can see it's, in fact, a little snapshot of what's happening. And if you came to me and I said, how old are you? And I looked up and I said, your VO2 max is this level, you're fine. Go away, have a good sleep. You don't have to worry. Okay. But now we've got no VO2 max, and you as a person out there in the community can't run around looking where you can go and get your VO max. So you need certain indicators that the amount of exercise you're doing is the proper. And again, how much exercise do we want? And now we go back to again our definition of healthy, if you remember, Debbie, and our definition of healthy is we want to do sufficient exercise so that we do not get any of the diseases that are associated with being sedentary. Okay. So the first thing we've got to do, and you can pick any exercise now. We've decided we're talking about exercise. We really shouldn't. You can pick any movement, right? But the first thing is that movement must accelerate your heart rate to 60% of its maximum amount, the exercise you're doing. So you say to me, but how do I do that? So, well, that's fairly simple, because we can calculate your maximum heart rate. I don't know what your age is, but if you know it's
57.
So it's your maximum heart rate would be 220 minus 57. Let's say 220 minus 60. What's that? 160.
Yeah.
And you need 60% of that. So that's so that's about 96 to 100.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say 100 just for fun.
Yeah.
So when you exercise, you've got to ensure that the exercise you're doing accelerates your heart rate to that level, and that it keeps it at that level. And at 60%, you can go the whole day. 60% is not pushing yourself to them. And you need to keep it at that for about half an hour.
Right. So even like a really kind of vigorous walk would do that.
Yep.
A few walking up hills and things.
That's it.
Yeah.
But it would have to be, when you describe vigorous, we would define vigorous as a walk, which enables your heart rate to accelerate that amount. And of course, you can even take your pulse, and it's something, again, make yourself part of the situation. And I do it. I do exercise at home, and I take my heart rate just for fun to see, have I accelerated? And it's just a bit of way of enjoying what you're doing, as opposed to just doing it because you need to. Sorry, and I want to stop there for a moment. In other words, don't do exercise that you don't enjoy. Why? Because it's going to affect one of the Trinity, one of the thirds, going to affect your mind.
Yeah.
And your mind is going to say to yourself, oh, Debbie, I've got to go and run up these stairs again, and I absolutely hate it. And you immediately see you've destroyed the whole idea of being healthy and happy. So don't, please, all those people listening again, and I've been there and I've done it, do not do exercise that you do not enjoy. Because what happens is that if you start off from the perception that you are going out now to enjoy yourself, the wonderful effects of the exercise become secondary.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, they're just part of the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see it.
I so see that, because I have just taken up flamenco dancing because I love dancing, and it is a pure joy to do 3 hours of flamenco dancing for me.
Well, you've got it there.
And you can see that, and it's really my mind is. I hate running. I don't want to run anymore. But dance is a whole new thing for me, and I'm following your book, actually following the advice in your book. I went back to my strategy and thought, what do I enjoy? And it's ice skating, horse riding, flamenco dancing. And that has really helped me, definitely.
Absolutely. Again, it's so simple, and we get into these funny situations in which we say, oh, I've got to go out. No, you've got to go out and enjoy yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
And you must just be ensured that the thing that you have also has the feedback that you're looking for. And if what you're doing, if you're enjoying it, but it hasn't got the feedback, it's the wrong thing.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. It's no good saying, well, I enjoy walking around my room. That's a silly thing, isn't it? That's not what we're talking about.
So, I mean, we've covered so many subjects. It's really, and it's really interesting talking to you. I'm getting more from talking to you, actually, than I got from the book. Probably a different channel, but really, really fascinating. And I really love that idea of, almost like taking yourself as a project and setting a strategy before you do anything else of where you want to be going, and then doing the how after you've done the why, almost.
Exactly.
That really works
Get
for me.
to know yourself before you do.
Know thyself.
And that is why I love speaking to 45, 50-year-olds, because it's at that age that you actually, if you haven't, you're in trouble. but you tend to get a feeling of who you are. And I don't know how to express that, but if you are in that position, you have confidence in who you are. You know, if somebody comes to say, "Oh, you are a stupid person" or something, you know, that's all. You know, it doesn't come near you. It just bounces way off. You know, you've been through too much. You know
on
it.
that point, Norman, if you are older, it's never too late to start exercising, is it?
No, you got to do it. No, you got to do it. In fact, my friend in Spain, in Pamplona, where the bulls run, he does 92-year-olds.
Really? Yeah.
Did I say 92? Yeah, 92-year-olds. And another interesting thing, we haven't discussed the impact of aging on our children, on our adult children. Don't forget. I'm not talking about
that. So yeah, please.
Okay, but because we should think about that, because I just want to talk about a little bit about if you're old and you go into hospital and you lie in a bed, you come out, stop. Let us say you got a mild pneumonia.
Yeah.
Go to hospital. And we're talking now about an 85-year-old like me.
Yeah.
And you go there and you lie in bed for a week in hospital. Your pneumonia will be cured, but you will have made your physiology about 6 times worse.
Yeah.
Because you've been totally idle.
Yeah.
For 10 days in a bed. Can you imagine an 80-year-old 10 days, 85-year-old 10 days in the bed? So when they measure people who come out of hospital, they actually have a worse physiology. They cured of their disease, but they have a worse physiology than when they went in. And of course, we haven't yet integrated exercise into our medical curriculum yet, but I think in Taiwan they have and everything. And what they have is they have little exercise units right next to the ward.
Yeah.
So that if somebody comes in with a mild disease like pneumonia, it's not, you can cure it. They exercise them as well.
Yeah.
So that when they go out, they in fact come out better than they went in. And you see, that's a very, very important concept of the way you can integrate exercise into ensuring that our physiology doesn't disintegrate. And the whole talk that we've been talking about here is, in fact, we got to keep our physiology in such a state that we allow it to go down, but in a very controlled manner, in the best way we can. That is aging. Okay, so the other thing is I'd like to talk to people about, please, is impacts upon society of aging. If you're on an aeroplane and they give us safety warnings, as you know, and they say if you go something, an oxygen mask is going to fall out of the place and you got to put it on. However, if you've got a child next to you, you do not put the mask on the child. The first thing you do is put the mask on yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Because the only way you can help somebody else is if you are in a position to help them.
Yeah.
That's simple as that. And you can't argue with that. It's no good trying to battle to put this on while you yourself are not breathing. Better you can put on the mask 6 times faster than a kid, boom, boom, and then you can do the kid. If you do it the other way, both of you are going to die. Why do I, and one of the reasons, why do I keep myself in the position or as physically able as I do? I think I have an obligation to my children not to regard them as being my carers.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So that is a very, very other important point which comes into the mind of a 75-year-old as we're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't want my children to be my carer. In fact, I don't want anybody to be, but particularly, I don't want my children to be there to be my carers. So I do whatever I can in order to ensure that I don't want to be too altruistic here, but we are helping them in a certain way that I think a parent should help their children.
Yeah.
The longer I can be in the way that I am, the better it is for them.
Yeah.
And so I think that in itself is a very important reason to begin to try and understand yourself and to begin to plan for what the future should be. And out of that, what is that driven by, Debbie? And now we're getting into really, really interesting concepts of human behavior. If you had to ask me, Norman, you say, what is important to you? And I'd say, one, that I do not lose my independence.
Yeah.
Why? If I lose my independence, I'm not interested in what other people think. This is me in my brain. If I lose my independence, I somehow lose some of my identity.
Yes.
Okay. So my identity and my independence are bound up one with the other. My wife and I, she had a hip operation, I think I've mentioned in the book, and we looked after each other.
Yeah.
So again, we come to this business of partners and what the interaction of partners are. I am indivisible from my partner, because I cannot see myself operating as a single human being if I can. And so by doing this, we reaffirm our independence on each other and our willingness, know yourself, to do things which will ensure that we keep this going for as long as possible. And we both realize that we are operating in a losing system. But that doesn't mean to say that you should abandon these inner emotions that drive one, that make one human. And I just feel that if you keep yourself within the proper physiological and mental condition that you have, you retain that essential of humanity. I'm not saying that other people are not human. Don't misunderstand me. I'm saying that is within ourselves. That's what I'm talking about. That within ourselves that drives us. And I can't think of any better reasons to ensure that we make the final decades of our lives the best decades of our lives within the confines that have given us.
That's lovely. I mean, that's really powerful what you've just said there about that, and that we do have some control over this as well, and almost a duty to each other to take care of.
Absolutely. I feel that absolutely strongly.
Yeah.
You know.
And also duty to society. And we've seen this with the pandemic, haven't we? The pressures on the NHS, and that, you know, with an aging society, maybe there is much more of a duty on us to stay, you know, stay out of hospital and, you know, as far as we can.
I think you've got it. I think, and I hope everybody listening to this podcast has got it, is that we cannot just abrogate things to the state. And this is not a political statement here, you know, this has got nothing to do with whether it's a Democrat. We cannot just give away these things. I cannot give away my independence. I cannot say, oh, I'll worry, you know, they will look after me. I think as soon as you say that, they will look after me. Now, you can put anybody in that they box.
Yeah.
You can put the government, you can put your children, you could put your friends, you could put anybody you like in there. As soon as you say that, you are saying, I am willing as a human person to give away some of my own independence, which makes me who I am. I'm willing to give that away and hope that somebody over there is going to do that for me.
Yeah, that's really amazingly powerful. So we're just coming to the end of our really
Yes, we are.
It's covered so much. Really, I know I'm going to go away, listen to this, and think about so many of the things you've said. So just a few, we always end with a few quick fire questions.
Please.
So you're 85 now.
Correct.
So what does the future look? Do you look to the future? How does it feel now? And do you still have ambitions? Do you still have things you want to do?
Well, the thing that we spoke about is that you must come to terms with aging.
Yeah.
You know, I know we have a look, and just as a side issue, some wonderful sportsman will keep going crazy to trying to be number one. But they can do what they like. They're going to fall off the edges. No, you can't do it. No matter who you are, you can be the world's champion. You're only going to be the world's champion for X amount of years, and that's the end of you. So, no matter who you are, you've just got to come to the terms. And I think what happens again, and I keep coming back to this, that you've got to know yourself. And if you know yourself, you know you're on the slope going down.
Yeah.
And you begin to understand what you are capable of at each portion of the slope. And you should embrace that. You should be just absolutely glad and happy that you are able to do within the confines of which is you've given that which you want to do. So I see myself that my brain power is going to go down because that's what the thing does. And as soon as I feel that I'm not contributing in the way that I should be contributing to whatever enterprise I'm in, looking at people aging, I will stop.
Right.
I will have no hesitation. I will not keep going on saying, "Oh," I will stop. Why? Because I understand the physiology that is happening to me and I cannot fight that physiology.
So
I
is
will just find another aim.
happiness and accept that idea of living in the present moment and acceptance, is that what you're saying there?
Absolutely. You've put it into, thank you very much. You've put it into a nutshell. Accept the position you're in and just enjoy that position because you cannot be in any other position. There's nothing else as an alternative. If you are healthy in the definitions which we've decided, good mind, good heart, good weight, you are as best as you can be. You cannot influence anything more than you have done.
Yeah.
Know yourself. And if you know yourself, you will be satisfied. You might not be too pleased, but you've got to understand that that is the most you've done and you did it.
That's lovely. Thank you for that. And finally, our final question, how would you like to be remembered?
Gosh, Debbie, that's an interesting question because I've never ever thought of how I'd like to be remembered. How would I like to be remembered? By whom?
Well, I don't know, by people you've touched, your family.
My family is easy. I'd like them to be remembered as somebody who they liked and who they felt had done his best in order to bring them up in such a way that they showed all the proper emotions and attributes that humans should. So that is from those people. From the people beyond that, I'm not too worried about. Sorry?
With your work, your book, you have touched lots of people. So
for those, again, if I have in any way made their lives better, then I think I've done more than I could ever have hoped when I started out on this whole enterprise. I think the ability to influence people in a good way is a wonderful thing. When you made me think about it. Now, I never thought about it before. Is a wonderful thing, and you've made me please. Actually, thank you, thank you very much. Yeah, that's great. I'm going to go. You've made my day. I'm going to go away and think about that. No, I'm absolutely happy that, and if you in particular, because now I know who you are, I've influenced you anyway. You've really made my day. Thank you.
Oh, that's such a pleasure. I've so enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for your time today.
No problem. It's been lovely, and goodbye to all those lovely people who are listening.
Thanks so much.
Bye.